We touched briefly on clean power earlier, but it is important to have clean, constant power and constant voltage. If we don't have that, we obviously can compromise the availability of our servers and our environments, but it can also compromise the integrity. If we have no power, our system's obviously down, but if we have no surge protectors on our system, a high voltage can damage the hardware or corrupt the data too. We use the UPSs for that and the PDUs. UPSs are uninterruptible power supplies, PDUs, power distribution units. We talked about the UPSs before. Remember, those were the big banks of car batteries. You can see a picture of those below here, as well as the PDUs for a large data center. UPS is the uninterruptible power that ensures we have a certain amount of minutes of backup power if the power goes out. The PDUs ensure that we have the clean power. For the exam, I'll also know these power fluctuation terms. A blackout is a long loss of power. The power is completely gone. A fault is a short loss of power. Again, the power is completely gone, but it can be only a few seconds. A brownout is an extended period of low voltage, and a sag is a short period of low voltage. Even if we have power issues in our area, it shouldn't affect our data center because our PDUs, our UPSs, and our generators will ensure that we have constant clean power at any time. A surge is high voltage over a longer period of time, and a spike is a short high voltage. Our servers, they'll never know the difference because we have all the countermeasures in place that ensures the clean, and uninterrupted power. So let's take a look at how a power setup would normally function. Over here on the right, you can see a graphic that will show a very simplified version of how we can have this and how the logical flow of the power would look in our data center. So the utility transformer A is the power company. That's where they send power into our system. We would then have an auto transfer switch, which has the backup generator attached to it. If the utility provider goes down and we have a blackout, the backup generator gets told start producing power. Transfer switch feeds into the UPS. Remember, that's the uninterruptible power supply. That's the large battery bank. If the power's good and everything's clean, UPS really just sits there with the fully charged batteries and does nothing. It lets the power pass through. Maybe not pass through, but it'll not start depleting its own battery if it's getting clean power. As soon as it doesn't get enough power, it'll start using the batteries. The power is then sent to the PDU, which is a power distribution unit. They can either be big units the size of a couple of racks, or they can be housed in the rack itself. And that's then attached to the electrical outlets that are in the rack, which all the servers are plugged into. Exactly the same flow on transformer B, and then each server in that rack would have one power supply plugged into A and one power supply plugged into B. So if anything broke in the A chain or the B chain, it will still have full power because the servers are designed to a spec where they can run on just one power supply. Where we sometimes get into trouble is where we don't do the redundant power system, or we plug one server into just one side. So if we plug one server into A and something goes down in A, well, then the server goes down. So good power distribution really is part of our data center design. I think most of the stuff on the left we talked about already. The UPSs ensure the clean power and the battery, and they can also act as surge protectors at times. The generators are fueled and can either be set up to kick in automatically, or we might have to start them manually. Just remember, many data centers only have 20, 30, 40 minutes of backup power on the batteries, so we need to ensure someone can be there and start the generator up if we have it on manual before the battery runs out. And then we talked about the PDU that also protects against the surges, as well as the distribution of the power, and those could be racked or not. One of the other things we need to be aware of with electricity, and which can cause us problems other than the power outages or fluctuations, is EMI, electromagnetic interference. Let's look at the definition first. It's a disturbance generated by an external force that affects an electrical circuit by electromagnetic induction, electrostatic coupling, or conduction. In our world, the electrical circuit that it affects could be our, circuits, and our power cables, and our network cables. This is most often the case with our network cables if they're not shielded properly, or if we run them too close to power cables. The magnetism from one cable can cross into another cable. That's what we call crosstalk. Since the electricity from one cable can affect the other, this can damage our integrity. The data is going to be corrupt. It can also damage our confidentiality. If someone can put a sniffer on a network cable, they can pick up our traffic. And then of course, it can also affect our availability. And this can be done in many ways. It can both be malicious or just poorly designed environments. Regardless of which one it is, our data is compromised. We can avoid the crosstalk if we do proper cable management, and we use shielded twisted pair copper Ethernet cables. With proper cable management, I'm talking about we don't run our power cables next to our networking cables. We could also choose to use fiber optic cables instead of copper Ethernet cables. Since they send signals that's not electricity, their signal won't be interrupted by electromagnetic interference. You also can't sniff fiber cables as easy as you can copper. It is technically possible, but it involves a lot of work, and it's not just a sniffer you clamp on and leave in place. So from our point of view, from an IT security standpoint, fiber cables are always more preferable over copper cables. First off, they're not susceptible to EMI, but just as important, they can't really be sniffed very well, making it a much more secure cable. If you get the question on the exam, what's the cheapest secure cable, it's always fiber. It's not as cheap as copper cables are,
but we are in Asaga's world. We do everything right.
And use of fiber cables extensively is part of that.